So this painting is one of the first night paintings I have done within the series of the Caribbean I have been working on. And it's inspired by a poem of Jose Marti, who is a Cuban poet, writer, philosopher. There is a line in this poem that says, Dos patrias tengo yo, Cuba y la noche. Kind of translates to two homelands I have, Cuba and the night. So that specific stanza made an impact on me, and I wanted to extract the idea of it and make it into a painting that has this person, kind of a self-portrait, self-look at myself. And the person he's reflecting on this kind of river. First, I made the whole painting in as a bright light painting, daylight, and then I let it dry and I submerged it into this blue kind of patina. And when the blue was dry, I started scratching out all the little details, so you started seeing the colors coming out of this blue night. So that's basically the painting. And then you have stars that are flying like insects, and you can see some shapes that reminds you of like a royal palm or trees, and these elements that look like mountains become abstract within the figuration. It's like a melting pot of a Cuban night. I remember since I was a young kid, I used to draw and paint a lot since very little, and my mother always was keen to kind of support that practice. She always told me I was going to be a painter, some kind of artist, and I kind of followed that. You know, I was painting. I was always very curious, observing things and kind of then copying them and then transforming them. And I went to the Academy of Arts in Havana when I was 16 years old. I spent there 4 years of painting, training myself in painting, sculpture, engraving. We did all kind of stuff. And I've been very lucky to be able to be an artist all of my life. So it's been like a very long art life experience till now. The creative process is kind of it varies with time. Right now I'm working with a lot of poetry that comes from the Caribbean, from Cuba most of the time. So I get inspiration from writers like Jose Lezama Lima, who was a writer active in the 1940s, 50s, 60s. Julián del Casal goes back to the 1800s. Jose Marti, the great poet, philosopher. Alejo Carpentier, with his ideas about the Caribbean and how the Caribbean became the Mediterranean for the American continent. You know, in the way cultures mixed came together for the last time in our planet. And so the process, I'm reading a lot of poetry, I'm reading books, a lot of information comes from literature, and my daily life experiences, my friends, my family, my memories as a kid in Cuba are very rooted in the way I work and I see the world. I get stanzas from poems and I combine them with ideas before starting painting. So most of the time I have the titles written. So I work from an idea, and then I start working and getting this into an image or sculpture or physical form. So it's like when you're reading a book, your mind is imagining the image of what you're reading. So that's a very creative process for any human being. So I just use that method to create paintings. This painting is called Exodus, part of the exhibition in the museum here. The exhibition name in the whole of the exhibitions is called Escaping Paradise. This main painting in the show, I wanted to have different elements that unite all of my body of work. It's a painting that I made specifically for the museum. It's the largest painting I have made just till now, and kind of playing with the idea of the allure of paradise that you find in the Caribbean, or in the collective imaginary of the people of the Caribbean, or also people trying to escape from this, not only from the natural beauty, but also from the traps of history that the Caribbean has. It's very convulsed. So these people are moving through the waters of the Caribbean, trying to escape, but moving also through time, through history. I don't work with sketches, so I had a vision of it, but then I just start, creating the basic structure for the painting, and I started working in the studio, laying the painting against the wall, then moving it back to the walls, and working on different scales. I had a scaffolding to work on over the horizon, where you can see there are 3 different suns, 3 different moments of the day, like the afternoon, midday, and then kind of getting into night, where you can see that blue moon. Behind the blue moon, you can see there is a kind of a ghost shape that is reflected on the waters here. And there are many different elements that combined are making this giant gesture of Caribbean symbolism, I will say. I studied in a very traditional school. We were taught in the European tradition, but also finding inspiration in the Cuban masters like Wilfredo Lam, Victor Manuel Garcia, or a lot of artists from the 50s who were making paintings out of a big inspiration for my work. When I was 20 years old, I was in Cuba, and I was looking outside, looking at the outside artists as a reference. And all of that information came into my practice. Studied history of art, went on different trips around, but then, 10, 15 years after that, I realized how there's a call for my homeland, and there's a need for me to create paintings that can talk to people that think and feel like me. Coming from Cuba, from the Caribbean, there is this natural mysticism that a lot of people there in this region of the world know. They know and they feel, they connect to it. So I tried for many years to develop different styles, different series of work to get to this point that is still experimental for me, where I can combine the methods that I learned 20 years ago in the Academy of Arts with all the different experiences then in painting, sculpture, installations that I've made, to get to a point where I can kind of talk to my people, no? and I don't live in Cuba anymore, but living in Miami has been one of the best experiences I've had, because it's a hub for it's a place where you can find everybody from all over the world, but specifically a lot of people from Latin America and the Caribbean. So it's a great place to be and participate in the community of a city that is growing. All of the galleries, and not only Miami, it goes all the way to Florida. So it's a really an honorable place to be and to participate. For this specific show, I wanted to create a body of work that pointed out some of the paths I'm working on. So you have a painting that is about a person that is about to get into a forest, kind of a night painting too. And then you have a very simple vase of flowers that I have been thinking of making these paintings for about 3 years. I've only made 2. This is the second one. So it took me like 3 or 4 years to make it. I've been thinking about it for a long time, kind of afraid of jumping into that theme, which is it's a very universal theme that most artists have worked with. Just a simple vase with simple flowers. This one is called butterflies, or mariposas in Spanish. It's the Cuban national flower. It's a white, very delicate flowers you find in the Cuban fields. And then I wanted to show another path in the work that are the storms. This monster that comes and attacks us in different moments of the year. That also brings, for the old Taínos, it was bringing destruction, but was bringing the opportunity of a new life. The word huracán, hurricane, huracán is 2 words in the Taíno language. It means center of the wind. So they saw it as this big monster coming to eat the islands, but also kind of a phoenix thing that was giving them new opportunity, new life. Then you have this night painting, Cuba y la Noche, one of my favorites. I'm very in love with these little tiny paintings. And then you have this, the big painting talking about migration, movements through history, to time, to geological lands, water. And you have this painting kind of absorbs the whole energy of everything that I made for the show, trying to give different paths within the practice.